Okay. Hello everyone. Hopefully my voice is loud and clear. Welcome to another episode. For this episode, there's a couple intentions. The intent is to some degree explain the title and then get into commenting on various ideas such as systems theory, emergentism, recursion, and equifinality. And so I'll get into, so think of it, half this episode is me talking about what systems are, its significance. And the first half is me trying to explain what do I mean that language is the skin of a non-physical entity. At first I wanted to name the title Language is a Non-Physical Entity, but I thought, there's a poetic value to say language is the skin of a non-physical entity. For this episode, I wish my notepad was working. I'm going to show the viewers. It's kind of like upside down. I'll give it a try, but I think it'll still be upside down. Let's see. Okay, it says screen share is connecting, but it should instantaneously connect. There we go. I guess the best thing I could do is kind of like, bring it up to as far as it can show. There we go. I guess in this type of notepad I could still write, So let me see how I need to hold this, like this. Okay. There we go. Okay, somehow I'll keep it in these boundaries and okay, I could use the notepad, whatever. It's upside down, but so let's look at the sentence. Language is the skin of a non-physical entity. To understand what I'm saying here, to understand anything really, we need the concept of a system. So I should read this for the viewers first. Let's go. So first of all, what is a system? A system is a group of interacting or interrelated elements that act according to a set of rules to form a unified whole. A system surrounded and influenced by its environment is described by its boundaries, structure, and purpose, and expressed in its functioning. Systems are the subjects of study of systems theory and other systems sciences. So, life is a system. Or we try to make sense of life by putting it in a system. That means humanity, human civilization, I guess the idea is that we creatures started from an unconscious position, and our consciousness identified reality as a system. So in some sense, human civilization, the behavior of human beings, for example, different human beings acting in accordance to the rules of society can be said to be in a system. And a system is defined by what? Boundaries. Oh my God. Even my coughs are part of a system, guys. People don't understand. So in order to understand an entity is a being, and for now, a creature in a world, a creature in a system. Now, even our body is a system, right? You could look at the cells and see how the body is holding them and all that. But to keep in mind that a system, it has boundaries. It has structure. It has purpose, and let's say it has expression. The aim of this episode is in some sense to start from this consideration that we are these physical creatures, these physical entities, which is another way of saying we're inside a physical system. But if we are to wonder what are examples of non-physical entities, let's say we have the image of angels and demons, we have the image of extraterrestrials, we have the image of, I don't know, transcendental entities. But I would say, to some degree, language, which is pointing to conception, is a non-physical entity, and language at its core is based on another non-physical entity known as geometry. So in other words, I could have written language is the skin of a non-physical entity, or I could have written geometry is the skin of a non-physical entity. Because language at its core points to inner events. Inner events have shape. And so this whole system, right, the definition of a system I was reading for you, that in some sense it has boundaries, structure, purpose, and expression. What's hilarious is that its structure suggests its boundaries, purpose, and expression. Or you can say its boundaries structure it, right? But on some level, the limitation of an entity, of a system, is based on how it is accepting itself to exist. Okay? So we have the idea of open systems and closed systems. Closed systems, their structure doesn't update, so in some sense whatever's in the system is kind of locked. But in an open system, the structure is able to change due to new variables being added. The human mind, if you become like an extreme ideological believer, right, that's like turning your mind into a closed system. But if you're someone, that means anybody who wants an answer to life, you're trying to close the system of your mind. And anybody still fascinated by questions of the mysterious nature of reality, your mind will automatically be open. Okay? And to understand this system is one of the most important things. We are unconsciously or subconsciously, every person who's alive has an understanding of some sort of system. The activities of life is not just how we are in a system, but how we are a system inside a system, right? So it's the interaction of multiple systems inside one system. Who was it? I think it was Emil Durkheim. He spoke about structuralism, functionalism, structural functionalism. Pretty much this dude looked at society, the sociologist, and was like, all right, let's assume it's the human being. Like, this is that part, this part of society is the brain, that part of society is the heart, and whatnot. Do you see? It's like an interpretation of a system. What is the structure of the system, and what are the components inside the system, or what is the interrelation between parts of a system that lead to the behavior of a system? Here I can share another idea, and this goes to the idea of synergy and emergent behavior. So think of the concept of synergy being in some sense. Here, I'll just read it for you. Synergy is an interaction or cooperation giving rise to a whole that is greater than the simple sum of its parts. So let's say, what is the approach of the human species? My whole aim, guys, the ultimate context, if anybody wants to know what's the agenda of this, random speaker in cyberspace, I will tell you. My whole effort is to get the human species to, in some sense, it's to get the advanced humanity to build the advanced civilization ASAP. That's my vision. I'm that guy in history who's like, there's no greater strategy for everybody. There's no greater victory than the advancement of civilization. And what is civilization? It is the system of man's mind living in the world. Right? We have made the world smaller to feel more comfortable about it in modern times, but I will tell you, the world is not as small as we are. There are mysteries in this realm that whatever one's analysis falls short. It's as if the person's trying to calculate the unobservable universe, and they're like, oh no, I'm stuck in the observable universe. Right now we are inside a physical system, but there's something more. There's an intent for this episode. Anything the viewers want me to explain, feel free to write in the comment section. And just as something to have it said on record, as Aristotle says, it's the sign of an educated mind to entertain an idea without accepting it. And I would appreciate if people, let's say the additional noises in the episode, just entertain it. I am not here to inspire the ashes of the world, but rather in some sense to point to the phoenix that would rise from those ashes. For me, an advanced civilization is how 8 billion people became like a phoenix that had resurrected from the defeat of an inefficient world. But anyways, I'll keep going. This is actually a cool episode. Like, interesting for me too, because I have been thinking about this idea for so long, and now maybe I'll be able to explain it to viewers in a new way. So think of it this way. To be a conscious entity in a world is to be part of a system. The concept of synergy was in some sense pointing to the idea that in some sense a system is more than the sum of its parts, okay? Or it can lead to something that's more than it, right? So an example would be a hunter-gatherer society, and so that system, all those people make the tribe. But if somebody finds berries, or somebody brings in something new, or a new member enters the tribe, right? I shouldn't say a new member enters the tribe, but I'm saying intelligence is kind of like the consideration of a closed system in a moment, and that closed system in some sense realigns what's in it. I'm going to read for the viewers something about systems theory. Systems theory is the interdisciplinary study of systems. Example, cohesive groups of interrelated independent components that can be natural or human-made. Every system has causal boundaries, is influenced by its context, defined by its structure, function, and role, and expressed through its relations with other systems. Okay, this is very important to recognize. The incredible thing about knowledge is that the more knowledge gets closer to truth, the easier it is to understand something that's there, that's actually there. So, think of it as an example, let's say the human system, okay? The human system, its boundaries are all the physical entities on all the members of the human species, right? It's influenced by its context, which is the idea of humanity, right? And this is where the solution to the future generations is hidden, you know? People think I'm just some guy talking about an advanced civilization, but this idea of an advanced civilization will fill the gap of the missing collective honor. We are involved in a biological program, an event where there's multiple human beings in one world, okay? Now, our structure is our biological shape, and our function and role are based on the potential of our structure. You see, the human being is such an incredible creature. Just to be a living being is incredible. Why? Because you are existing. It's like a system is leading to the individual, but the individual has an ability to interpret the system, right? So we are that part of the system of nature that has noticed nature and has found a way to non-physically separate itself through the advent of consciousness. When I say language is the skin of a non-physical entity, or language is a non-physical entity, whenever the word non-physical is placed beside, let's say, the word entity, what it's implying is that the entity is the definition of a system, of something in a system, and a non-physical entity means there's non-physical dimensions to the system. So if our understanding of the world surmounts to reality, the concept of reality, and reality is a system, and this system has moments where it experiences non-physical qualities, like there's something so important here that we are acting like we're only a physical entity, but we are using non-physical technologies. That means some people fight over, is God real or not? But when a person thinks about the idea of themselves, imagine somebody trying to see if their personality is real. And the question comes, what is reality? And it's actually directly experiential. That means who I am is not my words. It is not my name. It is not my story. It is how the presence of my attention is experiencing the whole world at once now. You see? We are, like we're like infinity acting finite. We are like, the mind is like an endless open system, and the body is like a closed system. And so when it comes to the search for truth, we're like, oh my God, is truth a closed system? Should I just believe in one storyline and let it end there, the search for truth? Or should I wonder about the nature of reality, and more specifically, how my mind structures the world and how the world structures my mind? If these two questions any human being attempts to answer, you will become an advanced being in a very short time. And when I say advance to yourself, right? I want to read for the viewers the concept of emergence. Read something about it. In philosophy, systems theory, science, and art, emergence occurs when an entity is observed to have properties its parts do not have on their own. Properties or behaviors that emerge only when the parts interact in a wider whole. It's as if like we're wondering, what is the human behavior? And the more we zoom in, we discover its various separate parts acting together. So think of it this way. Different organs are making up the body. It's as if there's our hand is different than our foot, but they are both parts of the same system. So when a person looks at a hand, they go that like their own hand. They're like, that's my body, right? And when they look at their foot, they're like, that's my body, right? But it's separately, they are not functionable. They're not able to function. So really what is going on this planet is that human consciousness is the emergence of a multidimensional system. Okay? So really we have on one side of the coin we're people living our lives, yay, but on the other side of a coin we are a biological system's journey into the greater dimensions that it contrasts in accordance to nature. It's super obvious that the way human beings have evolved and the way the rest of nature has evolved has been different. Okay, as if the human being, just like, Terence McKenna suggested this theory that like magic mushrooms, in like cow dung were consumed by like our primate ancestors, and it like revolutionized their consciousness. Just like something in the food in the diet of an animal can influence it. It's as if something in the content in the sensory diet of the animal, right? It's kind of poetic. Like the stomach digests food, and the brain digests sensory information. It really absorbs it. You know, sometimes I don't know if when somebody says I understand something, does that mean they understand something, or does that mean they have become that thing that they're trying to understand? You know, it's like if somebody tells me, hey, Mr. Within, or hey, Amin, I understand you, I'll be scared if anybody understands me, right? Because there are factors that have kept the original position for me still in the unknown, right? It's like our species has had an inability to realize intelligence is actually an unknown activity before we created the systems, the technologies, and tools to interpret it as known. That means we're all unknown beings, but we've found ourselves in an evolutionary sense capable through consciousness of knowing how we are being unknown. Language is the greatest clue that our species has a non-physical life. You know what's hilarious? Right now, people on the planet may think the idea of who a person is may not be important. May not be like physical, as real as the physical, but I am telling you, the future generations will outsmart us in such incredible ways that we will laugh at the suffering that never needed to exist. There's going to be so many advanced communicators in the future that it's just going to become, you know, imagine an advanced civilization being built by the most advanced beings. The most advanced state is playfulness. That means the greatest beings in the universe, they don't play games of breaking things or just creating things. They go into a state of appreciation. So what it means is eternity is appreciating the infinite ways that temporality can manifest as consciousness in the universe. I'm going to read more about systems theory. It says changing one component of a system may affect other components or the whole system. It may be possible to predict these changes and patterns of behavior. For systems that learn and adapt, the growth and the degree of adaptation depend on how well the system is engaged with its environment and other contexts influencing its organization. Some systems support other systems, maintaining the other system to prevent failure. The goals of systems theory are to model a system's dynamics, which is pretty much how it moves, constraints, conditions, and relations, and to elucidate principles such as purpose, measure, methods, and tool that can be discerned and applied to other systems at every level of nesting and in a wide range of fields for achieving optimized equifinality. Equifinality, just a quick definition on them, is the principle that in open systems a given end state can be reached by many potential means. Equifinality it's kind of like infinity it's like there are infinite conclusions. There's infinite endings, right? So that means hilariously, like, because there's 8 billion inner realms, 8 billion human beings existing in the same world, right? Experientially, we're multidimensional within our consciousness. Existentially, we're singular. So we're all existing in a physical world, but our minds are having their own simulation, like trying to copy paste reality and simulate it as real as possible to themselves. You know, it's very hard to say if knowledge is like there's somebody learning something, or if knowledge is the awareness that a moment of intelligence is present. You see, human beings need to trust reality. Childhood is another way of saying, how are you being trained to trust a changing world? It's like all parents are ultimately, to anybody who's a parent in the world, right? It's like, just in the context of an advanced civilization, if your child does not somehow find itself interested in its most advanced state, it's as if your child has not looked at the world properly. You know? Really, what is going on with the intellectual circles of humanity is that the species is slowly realizing it is not language. And then philosophers need to come in the future who come and stabilize and try to reason how human beings can live a collective experiential life while simultaneously maintaining an individual experience of life. Like, we haven't reached the era of collective mindhood yet, but it's like one of those legends that will happen at some point. You see, it's kind of like we look at a human being, right? Let's say a human being's biological system, and we ask ourselves, what is the structure-based boundary of the biological system? And we're like, yeah, it's our skin. Our skin is like, you know, this sort of bioorganic bag, right? And it's holding the body, and the body is 70% water, right? Like, technically, we are how, you know, 70% liquid organism is alive. We're 70% liquid, guys. Like, if in like in like in some extraterrestrial films, sci-fi films, there's like an alien jello or something, right? It's as if we would have 70% in common with a liquid organism. But it's just that our body is in a sort of shape. What I'm trying to say is, as an example, we look at the biological system. The edge of the biological system is the skin of the human being, but the whole biological system acts as one being in order to have access to a greater duality, right? It's as if all our cells in our body, all our organs are working together. Why? So a human being can exist to ask the question, right? Nature is trying to manufacture spontaneous infinitude. We are like that part of nature. Literally everything has a system, right? That means, like, think of it this way: a system is the edge of a world. Okay, to know the edges of a world is to know the system, right? Now, when we look at physical systems, we have the biological body as an example. We have social systems, how society is functioning. Civilization is a collection of, you know, the greatest capabilities of man's generated systems, right? So on some level, we have an understanding of a physical system. Okay, physical systems are easy to comprehend because there's content, but what is going on with the human experience is actually that there is it's like we are like our first wave of information is that we are a physical organism in a physical world. But the way a physical organism is being physical is being based on non-physical systems. That means me saying language is the skin of a non-physical entity, it's kind of saying language is the edge of a non-physical system. It's the same sentence, you know? So that's I think, you know, it kind of opens us up to a dimension of metaphysics which let's say it's traditional cultural mysticism or spirituality, right? Spirituality wasn't somebody believed in like a cartoon, you know, cartoon of their mind. Spirituality is another way of saying a known entity is discovering unknown variables in its moment, and it's wondering what to do with the unknown. When it comes to the unknown, everybody has to be like, yo, my inner realm is not enough, right? That means there are greater problems in this universe that only if the species is capable of reaching a level of multidimensional maturity where the species can be like, okay, there's my inner realm, which is the story of my emotions, desires, and all of that. But then it's like in the outer realm, we find ourselves in a system that is as closed as our minds are open systems. You see, that's the incredible thing about human civilization. Its potential is based on the activity of its smallest of like every part of the system. You know, like, I don't know how to say it, but it's like to understand that everything is a system is to recognize that the physical world that we're accepting is actually a relationship of shape in space. This is where I would say this would be for those who reach, let's say, poetically states of hyper, just like we have hyper speed, right? Imagine there's hyper intellectualism. And what hyper-intellectualism is how much a closed, ordered system is shaking, and then the reasons it is shaking, right? Let's say a human being looks at the world, fears the world, and tries to understand the world. Let's say there's someone who fears the world. They open their eyes and they're like, man, what is this? You know, it's like, I don't know what's going to happen. Let's say they have fear, okay? Now, fear is an event. It's the observation. It's like the emotional interpretation of an observation of a moment. Now, the idea comes is that the person, let's say, wants to understand their fear. In order to understand the fear from an unknown unconscious state, one has to clarify, as if you have to find that moment in your mind where you trusted that sight could be the world. When you find that moment in your mind, in your memories, you will realize that you have been the bricklayer of your psyche. When you realize that, something remarkable happens, right? Because everything, it's like we're trying to not wonder about what is the skin of the biological system, but what is the skin of a behavioral system. Like, think about it, guys. That means there's a system for particles, things that are static, but now imagine there's something of dynamism being considered. A static system is pretty much an observation of stability, okay? For example, mysticism, I find, is like the timeless chapter of spirituality. You see, we're so conditioned to be master projectors and ideological overlayers of reality, that just like somebody lays bricks, the brain has tunneled through as many moments of self-simulation as possible since the moment of its birth. You see, to be a human being is to be responsible for conscious discovery, like whatever is in your consciousness. Whether the person's trying to understand fear, or you're trying to, let's say, access, let's say, universalist responsibility. Like, the best way to, I thought, like, in the future, if people ask me what kind of school of thought do you follow, Mr. Within, I'll probably say I'm an unknownist. I'm someone who has realized that the unknown variables or reality are not unlockable unless certain collective forces are initiated. You know, it's not enough to just be ourselves and expect the world to advance. It's not enough, you know. I hate to break it down to all those people who are let's say, you know, humming, you know, to the kumbaya moment of oneness, but I am telling you, it's important to have love. It's important, like love is its own room and the intellect is its own room. And what it means is that a human being is a system that the content, the new content it finds readjusts the system. So it's another way of saying a person can choose to live a purely physical life. A person can choose to live a purely non-physical ideological life. Let's say a person can choose to live an emotional life. Imagine you're someone who, unless you have an emotion on something, you don't have an opinion on something. That would be kind of somebody who's possessed by emotions, you know. I mean, emotions do have a sacred quality about them. Every time in this lifetime I think about like moments where I've become emotional, it was as if there was some sort of sacredness in the context of the moment, as if some sort of direct contact with the unknown. Like that's really when I become emotional. Like there was a time, guys, where, like, you know how people see synchronicities the way Carl Jung spoke about them? It's like our mind is projecting our inner realms is a type of system and the outer realms is a system, and when the inner realms and outer realms align, the person feels like, okay, there's something beyond the world of my mind and body, right? That means there's something moving shape that is not a shape. Really, philosophy, people, let's say analytical philosophers, pretty much don't care about philosophy. For me, analytical philosophers they're kind of charlatans. Analytical philosophers, okay? Let me tell you why. Because they have limited the world. You see, that's the nature of belief. Okay, the nature of belief is like closing a system. If I say I believe the color red represents the emotion of anger, it's as if I have closed my mind to any other way the system can move, right? And so I find something hilarious that, you know, usually you see debates between an atheist and theist, but it's like in the future there's probably going to be a debate between a mystic on one side and an atheist and theist on the same side. And in that debate, a moment may occur where the mystic will say what theism and atheism have in common is that they are both looking for a snapshot of truth. The mystery of life is dynamic, do you know? So what it is contentment with the edge of one's world. I mean, sure, on some level, in order to confidently do something, a person has to know, like, their limits, right? But how open a system is depends on how much consciousness cares to access new dimensions. I mean, what else can spirituality be? Like, for anybody who's ever thought the idea of the soul was ridiculous, what can it be? What is the soul? The soul is the mystery of consciousness. It is the instantaneity of intelligence that has projected itself in a duality. You know, in the future generations are going to look at 2022 and be like, the way human beings interpreted consciousness was inaccurate, so they could never understand consciousness. That's how the future generations are going to look at us. They're going to look at us like imagine somebody who had access to a phone, or imagine somebody who had access to a technology and didn't use it. We don't know this, but I've noticed it as a subconscious kind of collective habit of just the species. Our species has managed to survive not by believing in the past. Our species has managed to survive because survival means world replacing. Survival is another way of saying you're surviving because you are seeing something new. Literally, it's novelty. That means creatures in nature that got to see new things had an advantage that creatures that just saw old things just didn't advance their vision, couldn't see, right? We're living at such an incredible time where we're all trying to be human beings, but at the same time, we don't know what like our intelligence is, right? We don't know if our consciousness is being live streamed from a timeless dimension or not, right? We don't know. But we know that language is a non-physical system. And so, let's say you're someone who you are saying the world is just physical, man. It's like this is it. You know, it's just physicalism is like the god, you know, man. It's like I worship the god of physicalism. You know? Or in some sense, religious people worship the inconceivable and secular people worship the conceivable. But the conceivable is allowed to update. The inconceivable, the image that points to the inconceivable has not been allowed to update. You know, there was a time where I thought, why are religious people getting mad, like getting angry at people who are not religious? Like I thought that, aside from like, let's say writings in the holy books, but I was thinking, why is like a religious entity, you know, being angry at a non-religious entity, okay? And you know what I realized? Just like a person signs up for a gym membership, okay, and they are paying for the gym membership and they use the gym membership, they identify with what they have invested into. To me, it seems that human beings go through states of suffering, and that takes them to a state where they're trying to look for a new ideological system. And when they find a new ideological system, the tendency of our brains is to inhabit what it finds. Like consciousness is poetically like an invisible wind passing through the branches of manifestation. So anyways, let me go back to the notepad that's been open for an hour. What I'm trying to say, guys, this is really the inspiration of this episode. I'm pretty much trying to make this argument that I'm like, okay, we see ourselves as physical entities, sure, and we say truth is something that it has to be real, and if physical is real, truth has to be physical. But the strange thing is, how we know something is physical is a non-physical event. That means it's not just neurons moving, it's that when the neurons move, some sort of consciousness is generated to notice the neurons are moving, right? It's like the concept of self-awareness is another way of saying that there is the unknown observer of every moment, and then there is the known observed. Okay, for a mystic, the definition of a system ultimately comes down to the unknown and the known. I'm telling you, this is all of life. Like if you know, let's say hilariously in the future, if an extraterrestrial, let's say teenager from another star system, you know, had, let's say, their family had immigrated to the world, you know, to Earth, and if an extraterrestrial child, which is just opening up to the nature of reality, asked me in some sense, what is like what's the simplest way, like I can explain to the simplest form of mind what this world is, and all of it is that consciousness is the intersection of a known visible dimension with an unknown invisible one. This whole time we've been thinking the world is horizontal. Some guy sat by a tree like Buddha and bam, and a vertical dimension opened up. You know, it's like something that was horizontally impossible, vertically never was. You know, never was impossible. So in our understanding of a system, right, pretty much this is like the Mr. Withinian vision, okay? Life, sure, the Buddha says life is suffering, but let's say life is a system, okay? So if life is a system has two qualities. A system, oh man, this, I forgot to update the screen, okay. What? Okay. So let's say life is a system, and a system, let's say, is cause. There's reason for cause, and there's consciousness of effect. Okay. So let's say life is occurring inside a cause and effect system, and what that means is something is caused and it's experiencing its effect. Like really what being born as a human being is like somebody, it's like being the echo. It's like somebody, let's say, shouts freedom, and the echo of that sound, it's like it knows it's going through a phase, right? I don't know how to say it, but it's kind of like, this might sound bizarre, but like creatures such as bats or dolphins, they don't use sonar, they are sonar. Like, I don't know how to say it, they are the waves their brain produces. Their consciousness is not just based on the animal body, it's based on the additional dimensions to reality the brain simulates to add to the moment's meaning, right? But let's say life is a system, okay? Or let me rewrite this, okay? I'll do it like this, okay? Let's say life is a system. A system is the idea of a cause and there being an effect. So the cause and effect of reality divides into, let's say, two ways, okay? Or I messed this up. Okay, here, I got it. Let's say this is the open system. A state of cause is an open system. And let's say the effect is a closed system, like the ending is involved. Okay, so a system can be divided into an open system and a closed system. On some level, what a system is the relationship of a causal force with a shape-based effect. Now, if a system can be divided into cause and effect, it also becomes divided between the unknown, the unknown and the known, right? So it's as if unknown cause, unknown effect, unknown cause, known cause, unknown effect, and then we have known effect. So, what is the point of this? I'm pretty much saying, okay, we're alive, we are wondering what is this life. We look at reality, we see it's a system. We see the system on some levels it's defined as being cause and effect based, but really what the cause and effect come down to, it's like the reason there's an unknown cause is like literally this, because a system is defined. A system is a bridge between the unknown dimension and a known dimension. Okay, an unknown possibility and a known possibility. Right, so I'm pretty much saying, okay, there's creatures open their eyes on Earth, then the creature's like, okay, what am I doing here, right? And it realizes that there's things that it doesn't know, and there's things that it knows. And part of the things that it knows is the karmic pattern of cause and effect. Right, like if somebody decided to think of life as like this next level video game, and the person started to think like a video game designer, and you're like, okay, let me try to figure out how this character in this video game is made, right? Like that's pretty much psychologists. That's what they're doing. Their psychologists are like people who are trying to deconstruct, trying to see who people are truly within. But ultimately it comes to the unknown. So I could have drawn this whole thing maybe differently, but let me simplify this, okay? Okay, let's say life equals system. System equals duality. Duality equals... Oh my god. There we go. Duality equals known, unknown, and simultaneously cause, effect. So if I was to rewrite this, it would literally be and honestly being part of a existential system. So let's say I just thought about, like, let's say our biological system is being part of the existential system of the universe. So our biological system, what other systems influence it, kind of mold the free will, right? That means it's like I can, it's like whether I believe in gravity or disbelieve in it, it's like it's acting as a force on this planet. Do you know? It's like there's some things by their instantaneous being, which is, what reality is something that is always there. Like that's the human way of approaching it. I'm pretty much saying being part of a dynamic system. pretty much, and ultimately what the system translates is an existential system, say an unknown existential system, is translated into a dualistic experiential system. You know what, believe it or not, what consciousness is in a dynamic system is its understanding itself. As if imagine there was like understanding was like a spirit, okay? And it was as if like the spirit of the moment, what is moving the moment. It's kind of like what happens to the human being is also simultaneously being what the macrocosm deserves, right? Advanced civilizations help lesser civilizations because the magnificence of the cosmos is so vast that the higher dimensions believe the lesser dimensions deserve to see it. So it's kind of like the more advanced you become, the more the power games stop, and the person begins to truly see the potential of a living force in the void. Another way I could write this whole thing So, I guess, guys, to kinda crystallize a sort of Mr.Withinian school of life here, school of thought here, I guess what I'm trying to say is life equals a system. A system is unknown and known. And so, there are 4 dimensions, literally 8 type of dimensions, that more than 8, but here I'll just say it, it's like okay, let me find my words for a moment. Pretty much I'm saying life is a system. There are unknown systems and there's known systems, and to each system there's 4 dimensions. So we have life, we have the system has the known, the system has the unknown. For the known, there's 4 dimensions, 4 conceptual dimensions. For the unknown, there's 4 dimensions. So literally, if a human being accesses all these dimensions, they can be considered as part of the advanced humanity. So literally, what is life? And a system is trying to understand how, by being in a system, it is being itself. The mysteries of the human mind for the unknown conscious agent roaming through the eyes of a biological program on the surface of the earth. It's as if to the invisible eyes, that to the invisible visions that pull matter forward. It's as if, like, to all the invisible intelligence, let's say in this universal sector, the advancement of human civilization is the victory of the universal sector. So that means, imagine in the future extraterrestrials want to invade Earth, all the other extraterrestrials in the universal sector defend Earth, for example, and their reason is that the advancement of the universal sector is the completion of the soul of the entity. So an entity is an attachment to a world, right? And so it's as if, what do we do with how our minds have been composed as moments of meaning, right? The mystery of human life is life is too fascinating, right, to avoid. So think of it this way, that whatever understanding of systems we have, of any sort of system, because what is knowledge? It's just noticing systems occurring, right? Being able to discriminate between what is mind forged, what is experientially forged, and what is existentially forged, right? It's kind of like if the definition of an advanced being is an advanced awareness in all dimensions. It's as if the mind is performing and the performer is a system, and what is the axis of this system, right? So if I was to draw this for you, it would look something like this. It would look like here. Okay. It's as if this central point is where human consciousness is, okay? And so there are dualities. It's like there's dimensions to the same moment. There's multiple dimensions to every moment. This is the wisdom of poetically considered the wisdom of an infinite being. Right? That means the concept of victory, failure, success, failure to a being that is not temporary to itself doesn't make sense. Like, the privilege of our eyes is not just what we have, but what we are, right? Because the value of life is how all the activities of the mind lead to its advancement. And the greater advancement of the individual's mind is how the world they're in is influencing their mind. And so it's like the consciousness till the end of time will be in rebellion in bringing its order right upon the chaos of reality. What intelligence is literally organization in madness, okay, in chaos, okay. Because what chaos physically means, pain, pleasure, psychology is involved, but what chaos means to the mind is in some sense like the moment is becoming so unknown that to act like we know it is kind of like throwing a stone in like a still pond, and noticing every act of the effort of the mind is creating ripples in this poetically still pond of the silence of the cosmos. So there's various dualities, various dimensions that are present in the moment. As a philosopher, pretty much the purpose of a philosopher is to observe how a value system is created for a character in a story. So let's say we have initially the unknown and the known. We have the physical. Here, I'll say it this way. The visible, the invisible, let's say. We have let's say the dynamic and the static. And here I'll just put, let's say we have the real and the unreal. It would be like simulation and truth. What I'm trying to say is that humanity will realize when you understand how duality works, suddenly the psychology of a self in a world suddenly starts to make sense. But when we realize that some part of the intelligence of the human being is not embodying matter in space, it is embodying the space where matter feels it is moving in its own mind. What the mind is how a physical brain is taking ownership of an invisible landscape. You see, our brains are doing something that it's as if they are bringing the world to life behind our eyes. That's what our brains are doing. It's like I could totally write a book on this, like the hidden agenda of the biological brain. Like, you know. Something is living life as if it is preparing for the future, right? There's a force in consciousness that the moment it sees a world and it realizes it has access to dynamism in perception, it's kind of like life is another way of saying, you know, an unknown attention is moving a known body. You see, these are dualities, right? Now, in this central point, okay, now let's say, you know, we use this, you know, chart I'm drawing here to come up with like a human being psychology. So let's say you're someone who believes reality is dynamic, okay? You believe reality is unknown, and you also believe that reality is unknown, but you also believe reality is visible. So literally it would be as if like this would be the plane of a sense of self-consciousness. I think what I have drawn here is like a geometrical prototype of like technology's hidden brain, you know. It's kind of bizarre, right? That reality is like the systems that exist, they existed by dependence on one another, you know? You see, these are kind of like, I'm saying, it's as if think of consciousness as this camera that has turned on, and this camera, it has lenses in front of the camera, right? So these lenses are all the ways that we have allowed abstract systems to become interchangeable with reality, right? Literally, we are saying we are a physical being, but how the consciousness moves is suggesting an unknown non-physical movement. Okay. It's like the species has surpassed the time of like disciples and gurus and is now at a point where it's as if 8 billion, crew members of poetically spaceship Earth, right? This concept of equifinality, where it says the principle that in open systems a given end state can be reached by many potentials, that's literally the dreams and ambitions of human beings, right? So first, the human species has to acknowledge it's an open system, and as an open system, it has to have the capability to accompany new dimensions, right? So an advanced civilization would be a civilization so advanced that it has instantaneously given freedom to creativity, right? But that freedom to creativity, that means it's like, some people look at artwork in a museum and they're like, wow, look at this beautiful artwork, right? And there's some people who look at the artwork and they're like, oh my God, whose brain saw this like color spectrum or this shape spectrum, Like I'm saying, like, our minds are art, are living art, Somebody's gonna, one day graffiti on like a wall, Mr.Within said, art is alive. How alive depends on how far we see. I'm pretty much wondering, like, imagine someone so fascinated with the idea of what would an advanced civilization look like. Like, to me, that is the greatest legend that the human mind has. Guys, this is a spiritual moment for me right now, I'm live streaming, spiritual experiences. There's so much to say about this topic, and literally what I do, when it comes to the content for each episode, is that I look at a geometrical position I haven't looked before. Sometimes in life, I don't know how to call it, but I think it's a sort of it's like a representation of liminality, okay? It's literally, I'm saying there are rare moments in life There are moments in life where one is alone with the cosmos, right? It's as if the person is, let's say, culturally lonely, but like when it comes to existentially, we are attending how an existential system is using language to reorchestrate a greater freedom for an experiential system. You know, it's like physical progress, that's progress in an existential system. You know, experiential progress, it's like it wasn't enough that we just built an advanced civilization to experience the most advanced state of mind. That means, imagine, like, I'll give it a time of, let's say, in 700 years, there are human beings that are living, I would say, in the era of collective mindhood. Do you know, like, what I'm trying to say is, right now, the imagination of human beings are separated. That's why there's a need for language and communication. For the future generations, just like a phone, like a person's phone has airplane mode, right? And you take off airplane mode and the phone gets access to everything, right? So similarly to human consciousness, civilization 1.0 is still like being a passenger in civilization. People have not realized the value of our free will is how far it pilots through the vision of the world. And really the question of life is literally comparing one instance of a system with other instances of the system. You know, this you know, a poetic sentence just arose to me. We are heaven's way of living on earth, you know. Really, the value of life is in our, let's say, in the emotional conclusion of our analysis, right? Like, imagine the person, you know, that imagine there was a machine capable of like computing the truth of everything. Right? Like, imagine like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But imagine, you know, the person, like, there's this very sophisticated machine and the person types in, okay, what is truth, machine? Right? And imagine this advanced machine, in some sense, says the biggest truth of reality, and the advanced machine suddenly, like, you know, presents a mirror to humanity. And the awareness of what the soul is a reflection of, you know. You see, something that I think, you know, it's like every system, you know, has advantages and disadvantages, you know. Like, I was raised in an Iranian culture and then infused with Canadian culture, right? But like, at some point my mind fathomed, what if I was born in that part of the world? What if I was born in that part of the world? How would my eyes and how would the ethos, how would the collective inspiration of the realm move my attention as in, let's say, in the free will of my soul, you know? What I'm trying to say is, we realize we're in a system. We realize the system has a natural side, unnatural side. Like, that's another duality I could have drawn here, right? Let's say unnatural. Let's say natural. Oh my God. And guys, hilariously, I'm gonna treat the chat section as if it was a classroom, right? I don't know why, like, it's like we're living at a time where technology is allowing conscious knowing to be teleported. It's like the whole species has a huge problem to solve, and people are like, what's that problem? It's the future. It's like, imagine somebody who was super relaxed. They're like, hey man, what do you believe the meaning of life is? And the person's like, to watch the future, man. As if reality is a cinema, Anyways, I'll get back to the topic, What can I say? Ludwig Wittgenstein says, the limits of my language is the limits of my world. What language is abstract symbolism, abstract geometry being attributed to events. Language is a way of converting like a dynamic system into a static system of meaning, into a static review. Like what language is language is trying to summarize, like language is a two-dimensional technology trying to summarize a 3D technology, imagine. As a sort of example of comparison. There's so many ways a human being can speak, and ultimately, after the simulations have completed, after the species wakes up from its enchantment by language, it's going to be reoriented with its soul. But what the soul is the presence of the unknown. Right, so when we realize we're unknown beings, human consciousness is at this strange position where in front of its eyes it's identifying as a physical entity, but behind its eyes it's like, imagination is non-physical, hilariously like non-physical real estate. It's like a non-physical place. It's so remarkable how there's a mind, even how there's anything moving at all in the void. There was a time I would get, depressed about reality. But when I realized that it's more unknown than known, it's like I was liberated from language being the system. Like it's as if like we're trained as an evolutionary animal to act in accordance to a subjective version of ourselves, right? But when we realize we're like a mysterious, we are like a hidden, we are like the genius of the sky hidden in the soil of earth, This might sound bizarre what I'm going to say, but I think a seed, like a seed planted in the soil, that seed is like an archetype of a genius in the plant kingdom. In the insect kingdom, the caterpillar is the most genius insect, When I think about like the karma of a caterpillar, it's as if that caterpillar is in a universe where it converts into another entity. There was this theosophist that said underneath every underneath every moment of matter, there is a unit of awareness, a unit of consciousness. So that means behind anything that moves in the realm, there is an unknown force. That unknown force for the human being is how we are dualistically experiencing our body, but singularly existing, singularly projecting the mind. It's as if when we think we're the body, we have to be in one world. When we close our eyes and think about what we can be, the nature of the mind is that it just wonders about multiple worlds automatically. I think, the nature of the brain is so advanced. Like, imagine there's a teacher in a math class that writes a problem on the board, and all the students, like, some of them figure it out, some of them don't, but the brain till the end of time is trying to solve that problem. Do you know? In an advanced civilization, there's no longer the concept of a teacher and student. There's just explorers and explorer class, right? That means those who have explored pretty much the four states of reality. Our attention is to something in reality, and all human beings wonder if their attention, whatever is on, if that is true or false, right? False would imply a state of no meaning, right? And true would be like a state of meaning, let's say, due to the mandate of logical analysis. Reality is like a system, an unknown system that is being rediscovered by a known part of it, It's like when imagine in an advanced civilization, when one human being, let's say, attains an advanced state, the whole civilization attains the advanced state inevitably, because the pattern is present in the system. Do you know? The more we live in an advanced way, the more the future generations are going to try to be ahead of that. Being alive is like finding yourself in a world where how you move your attention becomes its meaning. And human beings have different preferences, right? You could say, even when it comes to creating a spectrum of the psychology of beings, right? Like, some beings are content with just identifying as being chaotic or ordered. They're in a universe where the ultimate judgment is a duality. There are some beings who they are in a singular universe, and in some sense they have become poetically the dehumanized natural inner paradise, right? It's as if enlightenment is this bizarre moment when a human being realizes they're not just a human being. There's an involvement of an invisible collective intelligence with the surface of the earth, right? There's something here aside from just personalities simulated in the moment. We are attending the mystery of worlds. We're living at that time where the human being has enough of a privilege to wonder about the inner workings of the mind. Imagine they ask someone, do you identify as a human being? And they're like, yes, I do. And then they ask them, do you identify as a planetary being? And the person says, no, I don't. Imagine that I'm creating a hypothetical situation, right? And I'm saying it's like, being conscious is watching an event it's like some part of consciousness knows where it actually is, you know? The presence of attention, the discovery of the unknown moment. Once we find freedom with the unknown, we become pretty much an era of infinite psychology begins. That means imagine the psychology of an infinite being, right? Imagine like immortal psychological problems, like the psychological problems of an immortal being. Because this moment happens once, I'll say it this way. We have a biological storyline. We have an existential film, okay? And we have a psychological position. So whoever's listening to me, regardless of what kind of person you are being some sort of energy with a position. So it's all about the dimensions we see to whatever we are that's being in the moment. So it's like one person being capable to be like, okay, there is a visible self and there's a invisible self. There is a known self. There is an unknown self. There is a collective world. And there is also a temporary self. Honestly, what the purpose of life is how we use the body's existence and lifespan as a sort of fuel tank for the airplanes of our vision. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's as if it's like we ask, okay, what is the value of existential energy? Right? And so we're like, okay, we use psychological energy to give a value to existential energy, right? We position our attention as a self in a world, so we open up a relationship of a finite position with infinite possibilities. So in front of our eyes, yes, we have biological limitations, but behind our eyes We have non-physical, limitless attributes, as if consciousness has been exploring the universal sector through the human eyes. And it's happened before, right? So hilariously think as if there's a genetical memory through DNA. Now, poetically, we can say, imagine the Earth has a memory. As if imagine Mother Earth remembers all the civilizations, all the children of Mother Earth, all the generations, products of intelligence generated by the Earth, right? It's on some level, it's like we are not born in the Earth, we are born of Earth. We are matter's soul. Like, that's such an incredible achievement. Like, it's such an advanced thing to exist, you know? So anyways, guys, this episode, there's more to say. I might, here, I'll make a part 2 where in the future I might give another lecture on this topic. Let's say part 1 out of 2. There we go. Whoever you are, wonder about the role of language in how it's influencing the psychology of the species. There is an approach where a person, by attempting to solve a bigger problem, automatically attains the strength to solve smaller problems. So when the intelligence challenges its own world generation ability, automatically one notices the unknown. A sort of instant humility of accepting the unknown arises. And once you have accepted that intelligence has an unknown presence, but the body has a known existence, right? It's as if the value of our body is based on our mind, and the value of our mind is how well it uses its body to experience the world, to do anything with the world even. So wonder about the mysteries of the primordial essence of how anything is animated at all. Wonder about where your eyes are, and not just where they have come from, but where they are going. Like, there's some people who are trying to find the past solution to the secrets of the soul, and there's some people who realize, like, the answer to the soul is poetically an ambassador of an ultimate truth, right? We are like truth's way of forgetting itself into manifestation, you know? It's like behind the scenes of our own consciousness. Most likely we're incredibly advanced beings simulating reality from the future. What we think is human intelligence is actually a sort of future genius. That means the geniuses in the future found a way to represent the past again, where I'm telling you, it's as if somebody said, Mr. Within, where are the souls going? I'll be like, all souls are returning to where they came from, right? It's kind of like the reality is like a soccer game. There's like rules, boundaries, players, but after the game is finished, everybody goes home. You know, somebody waters that grass alone the next day, you know? So what I'm saying is, like, why should we honor the conscious capability to navigate existence? Like, the value of our minds. If a person, let's say, has lost faith in everything, at least you can't ignore how the intelligence of the human being is advanced, and especially in compared to all the other species in the observable universe, our brains are seem to be the most advanced thing going on in the universe. Not just for us, but for whatever else there is out there. Can you imagine if consciousness is so rare that it's like extraterrestrials, they were passing by Earth and they're like, yo, look at Earth, consciousness is sprouting, how incredible. Imagine extraterrestrial tourists taking a photo of our slowly evolving species on Earth. It's all about the nature of one's vision, and how the depths of one's vision doesn't lead to certainty but leads to trust. So it's as if the mind's greatest performance was the body's greatest dance. And the body danced in the spotlight of the soul. The soul is the unknown viewer within, actually. They asked the yogi, who are you, man? And the yogi was like, there is no I. Imagine somebody says, how are you doing, man? And you're like, there is no concept of you, man. It's all, the periodic table is hallucinating the psychology. And in reality, guys, I'm telling you, the moment the human species adopts a sort of playful tolerance for the multidimensional, it will have intelligence boosts. I'm saying, just like how they say technology is exponentially advancing, human perception and human sight, its advancement is in accordance to how it accepts the edge of its world. Right now, it's very ideological. We are living at that point where the species is still using a simulation of our species is still in a storytelling mode. Okay, language is everything to people, right? The content of their mind is their whole life. But to want to advance civilization is to have the capability of wondering what kind of being is able to experience the totality of all dimensions of being. That means if one moment of consciousness sought to experience everything, in some sense the fastest way is an instantaneous noticing of everything. That means right now I can identify as the whole universe happening, or I can identify as a human being on Earth, or I could have my own impersonal dimension and personal dimension, right? It's like how really what our personality is through which sort of a geometrical outline, with what sort of geometrical structure the archetype of ourself becomes through an emotional expression, right? Because it's literally like a combination of information from multiple dimensions. It's like from one angle the philosopher's like, okay, maybe everything is unreal, right? And from another angle the philosopher's like, what if everything is real, right? So the nature of the mind is testing the waters of the texture of its world, of the fabric of the cosmos, right? It's as if the species is exploring not just physically but also non-physically. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode was interesting. Much blessings and namaste. Rise.